Jake Paul is a bigger fraud than what people think. And yeah, so as we know, last night, Jake Paul beat Mike Perry via 6th round TKO in an absolute embarrassing clown show fight. Both guys absolutely embarrassed themselves. I made a video on it earlier saying that both guys absolutely embarrassed themselves. But I'm here to talk about that Jake Paul's an even bigger fraud than what people actually thought he was. Honestly, an absolute joke of a person, Jake Paul. Absolute scum of the earth, as we all know. Honestly, just the way he was going about the win last night against Mike Perry and just everything. Honestly, it's just so strange. He's a bigger fraud than what people think. He's going on after the fight calling out Alex Pereira, knowing perfectly well that fight is not going to happen, and will probably try and make out that Alex Pereira is ducking him. But Alex Pereira is currently in a big UFC contract, which he's not going to leave to just fight this clown, Jake Paul. Jake Paul is not worth Pereira's time. Pereira's not ducking him. It's just not worth his time overall, to be fair. And Pereira's in a UFC contract, but Jake Paul's going to make out that Pereira ducked him. He's calling him out to try and make out a big narrative about it all. And yeah, he's done that once again. Jake Paul is also doing that with Conor McGregor, making out that Conor McGregor's in a UFC contract as well currently, so he's not going to go out to that and fight Jake Paul. Honestly, I mean, as I've said, the fight against Mike Perry is what it is at the end of the day. Both guys embarrassed themselves. Mike Perry also kind of exposed Jake Paul in that fight as well. Jake Paul was literally just throwing himself into Mike Perry's shots a lot of the time. Well, not a lot of the time, but quite a bit of the time as well, to be fair. Jake Paul was just dominating the fight, but a bit of the time, he was just throwing himself. Jake Paul was just throwing himself into Mike Perry's shots, exposing his defense to be absolutely shocking. But yeah, I think Jake Paul and his manager are both absolute frauds overall, to be fair. They're trying to be as clever as possible with what they're doing. But I feel like the majority of people by now have found out what they're doing, to be fair. And, we all know about the whole Mike Tyson situation with Jake Paul now. I mean, that fight's an absolute shambles, to be fair. Jake Paul, he thinks he's doing great for boxing and all that. His manager is saying he's doing great for boxing. You're bringing a a legend of the sport out of retirement, who's 60 years old, who's got, clearly, he's got medical problems as well, Mike Tyson, at the moment, and they're still actually going through with the fight. Should not be happening at all. Absolute shambles overall, to be fair. Jake Paul is clearly juiced up. You can tell he is very, very, very clearly juiced up, and you're putting him up against a 60-year-old man. Absolute shambles. And, this is a tweet that Jake Paul put out earlier as well. He put, Mike Perry is a fucking beast, has more balls than that little leprechaun. I assume he's going at Conor McGregor. Where are all those MMA experts that said Mike Perry was going to end me? Next up, me versus Mike Tyson and Serrano versus Taylor on Netflix, November 15th. It will be the biggest combat sport event of the 21st century. No, so it should not even happen. Should not even happen whatsoever, to be fair. And it honestly is a shambles, in my opinion. Honestly is a shambles the way that's allowed to happen. And, Jake Paul's, he doesn't want to fight anyone the same size as him. And the fact is as well, Darren Till was basically on standby for this fight against Jake Paul. He was on standby. He was originally meant to be on the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul card. He was on standby. He could have been in that fight. But no, they offered Mike Perry. Darren Till is Jake Paul's size. Jake Paul didn't want to take that fight. Darren Till's a more better technical boxer than what Mike Perry is. I mean, Jake Paul, could he still probably beat Darren Till? Probably yes. But the point stands is that Jake Paul does not want to fight anyone the same height or same size as him in weight. Simple as that. He does not at all. The Darren Till fight was there and could be made, but you went with Mike Perry. I know overall, probably, you'd say bigger money fight. Mike Perry's a bigger name than what Till is, but it doesn't change the fact that Jake Paul doesn't want to fight anyone the same size as him. That's what we've seen throughout the career of Jake Paul anyway. Nate Diaz, way smaller than, well, let's be real, he's quite a bit smaller than what Jake Paul is natural weight-wise. Tyron Woodley, smaller than Jake Paul, height and weight-wise. Shocking stuff again. And, I just think it's an absolute shambles, to be fair. And, the way as well, Jake Paul and his manager were being ridiculously clever, trying to pull out both Andre August and Ryan Borland, trying to be ridiculously clever with that. But at the end of the, where did they get those two from? They just, I just don't get it. They both had such long layouts out before they came in and fought Jake Paul as well. They're trying to be clever with their matchmaking, but it's there for everyone to see. You're being fraud checked by what you're doing. Honestly, a joke there as well. And Jake Paul has not improved in those fights as well. Since the Tommy Fury defeat, in my opinion, he's not improved. People were like, "Oh, look at that jab of Jake Paul." I mentioned it earlier, but it's easy to jab someone who's walking straight at you. Where is your jab against a moving opponent in Tommy Fury, who's a very low-level boxer, by the way? Jake Paul's out here saying he can be world champion. You're fighting Mike Tyson, and he seems to think that can try and get him a world title shot. Based off what? An old Mike Tyson. Honestly, a joke. I just don't get, he could have gone on and tried to pick out another boxer, in my opinion. I feel like Julio Cesar Chavez could have been better, than Mike Perry, because he is an actual boxer. I mean, I was slagging him off earlier, but, Chavez is an actual boxer, though. He is an actual boxer. It made more sense for that fight to happen instead of the Mike Tyson fight than the Mike Perry fight overall, in my opinion. 100%. Again, he was another opponent who was on standby because he was also meant to fight not Mike Perry. He's also meant to fight Darren Till on the Mike Tyson Jake Paul card. So again, you could have gone with him to fight an actual boxer who would, Jake Paul, as I said earlier in one of my videos he would beat Chavez. But at the end of the day, you'll get more credibility off that. And Chavez would have actually probably, put Jake Paul up for a run for his money as well, though. Unlike Mike Perry, who was just walking into his punches consistently, following Jake Paul around the ring with no game plan whatsoever. And look, I don't think the fights that Jake Paul have are rigged. Not at all. They're not rigged. But, he's fighting people way smaller than him, people who aren't actual boxers, people who are a good 10 years older than him. Mike Tyson, 30 years older than him. So, it's honestly a shambles overall from Jake Paul. Absolute massive fraud. The way he's able to try and cherry pick Andre August and Brian Borland. Joke stuff there. The Mike Tyson fight's an absolute disgrace to society. Honestly, it is. Should never happen. Absolute shambles, and Jake Paul's the absolute scum of the earth for taking that fight. I don't want to ever see Jake Paul up against an MMA fighter. I don't. I did mention Darren Till as, you could have gone with that instead of Mike Perry. But from now, no MMA fighter. I don't want to see the Alex Pereira fight, where it would never happen, as I explained earlier on. Alex Pereira would beat him, but again, it wouldn't happen. But generally, though, Jake Paul, just fight proper boxers now, though. Don't try and bring people out of other sports and fight them. And, retired as well. He would never fight Pereira anyway, as I explained earlier. He wouldn't fight Conor McGregor, but Conor McGregor, actually, no, he probably would, because Conor McGregor's way smaller than him, though. That's the thing. It's just a shambles, to be fair. An absolute shambles. He knows he can't beat someone his size. An actual moving opponent, Jake Paul will not be able to beat them. And Tommy Fury proved that. Even an actual moving MMA fighter who's Jake Paul's size, Jake Paul will not be able to beat those fighters. He won't be able to get that jab going. He won't be able to set up that right hand, which he literally jumps and leaps over to try and land, literally winding it right up from behind and just leaping over. Yeah, honestly. Anyway, Speak to you on the next one. Jake Paul's an absolute fraud and a joke to the sport and an absolute joke to society. Get him out.